The cemetery was utterly silent in the rain-soaked morning. Black umbrellas dotted the landscape like ravens perched on gravestones, their surfaces glistening with fresh rainfall. The ceremony unfolded with practiced solemnity, guests dressed entirely in black, every face carefully composed in mourning. The polished mahogany casket lay beside the open grave, poised above the abyss. Beneath it, 6 feet of darkness waiting to swallow Pennsylvania's most powerful real estate titan. Inside the casket, Ferguson Hall rested motionless. The man who had built an empire from concrete and steel, who had reshaped Philadelphia's skyline with his bare ambition. His eyes were closed, his distinguished features frozen in eternal repose. Ryan Hall, his younger brother, stood beside the casket with trembling shoulders and a silk handkerchief pressed to his eyes. Tears traced paths down his well-groomed face. The pastor cleared his throat, preparing to offer the final benediction. 2 workers in dark suits stepped forward, gripping the chrome handles of the lowering mechanism, ready to commit Ferguson Hall to the earth. Then a voice cut through the air like a scream in a cathedral. "Stop!" Everyone turned at once, shock rippling through the crowd like electricity. Phones rose instantly, recording the disruption. At the edge of the funeral tent, a woman in a stained blue janitor's jumpsuit pushed through the assembly of tailored suits and designer dresses. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun, her face lined with exhaustion, but her eyes blazed with a fire that made the wealthy mourners step back instinctively. A faded name badge was still pinned to her chest. Felicia Keys, Building Services. People parted as though she carried a contagion, their expressions shifting from shock to disgust to curiosity. Felicia pointed straight at the casket, her rubber-gloved hand steady despite the tremor in her voice. "Don't bury him," she said, breath coming hard and fast. "He's still breathing, and his brother is the one who took his heir." "Who is this woman?" someone whispered sharply. "The cleaning lady," another voice murmured with disdain. "Security," Ryan Hall's voice cracked like a whip. 2 guards in dark suits moved to intercept Felicia, but she dodged past them with the agility of someone who had spent years navigating spaces where she wasn't supposed to exist. The rain intensified, drumming against the tent like urgent fingers. She stopped at the edge of the carpeted platform where the casket rested and turned to face the entire assembly. "My name is Felicia Keys," she announced, her voice carrying over the rain and the murmurs. "I've cleaned your offices for 7 years. I've emptied your trash. I've scrubbed your floors. And I've seen everything you thought no one would ever see." Ryan Hall's face transformed, grief evaporating like mist, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Get this person out of here," he hissed. "My brother is dead. We will bury him with dignity, not with this circus." The crowd shifted, uncomfortable. The pastor lowered his Bible, uncertain. The workers froze, hands still on the lowering mechanism. Felicia pointed again, her gesture unwavering, her voice growing stronger. "He's not dead. Someone gave him something, a chemical that slows the heart to almost nothing, makes the body cold, fools every test. He looks dead, but he's trapped inside, suffocating." She pulled a small glass vial from her pocket, holding it up for all to see. "And I have the antidote right here." A wave of gasps swept through the mourners. Camera lenses zoomed in on the vial, its clear liquid catching the gray morning light. "Antidote?" someone echoed in disbelief. "What on earth is she talking about?" Ryan's composure cracked further, sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air. "Enough," he shouted, turning to the guards. "I said remove her, now." But Felicia didn't flinch. She locked eyes with Ryan, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Ryan Hall," she said softly, as though speaking to a child caught in a lie. "I cleaned your office last Thursday night. You thought I'd already left, but I was there behind the door when you and Dr. Marcus Webb discussed the chemical burial, when you talked about the inheritance, when you planned exactly how long to wait before the toxin would be undetectable." The name landed like a stone thrown into glass. Every head swiveled to the left, where Dr. Marcus Webb stood frozen, his physician's bag clutched in white-knuckled hands. His mouth opened, then closed. He stared at Felicia the way one might stare at a ghost that shouldn't exist. "Continue the ceremony," Ryan commanded, his voice desperate now. "Pastor, please." The pastor's hands shook on the pages of his Bible, eyes darting between Ryan and Felicia. Felicia took 3 slow steps toward the casket, her movements deliberate. Her expression softened when she looked down at Ferguson's still face. "Mr. Hall," she whispered, almost to herself. "You saw me. When everyone else looked through me like I was furniture, you saw me." Then she raised her voice to the crowd, and it rang with fierce conviction. "Open the casket, check his pulse point, feel his chest for warmth. Look at his fingertips, they'll still have color. He's been under for less than 2 hours. There's still time." She held up the vial higher. "I found the antidote in Dr. Webb's medical bag, the same bag he carries everywhere. Please, let me give it to him before it's too late." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the rain seemed to pause. The white tent billowed in a gust of wind, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled like the earth itself was holding its breath. A woman in an elegant black coat stepped forward from the front row, her designer heels sinking slightly into the wet grass. Her hand rose to her throat. "If there's even a chance," she said, voice trembling, "we have to check." "Absolutely not," Ryan snapped, but his voice had lost its authority. Panic leaked through every word. "This is insane. My brother has been examined. The doctor confirmed it. We are not desecrating his rest based on the ravings of—" "Let her check," a man's voice interrupted from the middle of the crowd. "It costs us nothing." "Just open it," another urged. "What harm could it do?" What had been whispers became a chorus. Heads nodded. Phones continued recording. "If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 10,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these stories matter. Please subscribe to Beyond Hope and Belief, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue." 4 nights earlier, Felicia Keys had been pushing her cleaning cart down the executive corridor of Hall Industries Tower. It was past midnight. The building was supposed to be empty. She'd paused outside Ryan Hall's corner office when she heard voices, low, urgent, conspiratorial. The door was cracked open just enough for sound to escape. "The toxin is undetectable after 48 hours, a clinical voice said. "Dr. Marcus Webb. Once he's buried, there's no evidence. The death certificate is already signed." "And you're certain it looks like cardiac arrest?" Ryan's voice, stripped of its usual charm. "Indistinguishable. His vital signs will be so depressed that even a trained physician would declare him dead. The paralysis is complete. He'll be aware but unable to move, unable to speak, when we bury him." "He suffocates," Ryan finished coldly. "And I inherit everything. The company, the properties, the offshore accounts, all of it." Felicia's hand had frozen on the cart handle. She'd held her breath, pressed against the wall, invisible as always. "The funeral is Thursday," Ryan continued. "Quick burial, closed casket, we cite his wishes for privacy. No autopsy, no delays." "What about the antidote?" Webb asked. "Locked in your bag, which never leaves your sight. By the time anyone could question anything, Ferguson will be 6 feet under and the chemical will have degraded to nothing." Felicia had fled silently, her heart hammering. She'd spent the next 3 days planning, watching, waiting. And on Wednesday night, while Dr. Webb attended a charity gala, she'd picked the lock on his office and found the vial marked counteragent, tetrodotoxin derivative. She'd stolen it. And now she was here, fighting for a man's life in front of everyone who'd ever ignored her existence. Back at the graveside, Ryan Hall's mask of grief had shattered completely, replaced by naked fury. "This is a disgrace," he seethed, turning to address the crowd. "My brother lies here in peace, and this." This janitor, who has clearly suffered some kind of mental breakdown, is being entertained. Look at her. She cleans toilets for a living. She's probably high on something she found in a supply closet." The crowd murmured, some nodding. Class prejudice rippled through the assembly like a wave. "She's clearly disturbed," someone muttered. "Security should have stopped her at the gate," another voice agreed. Felicia felt the familiar weight of invisibility pressing down on her, the assumption that someone in her position couldn't possibly know anything, couldn't possibly matter. But she'd come too far to back down now. "I'm not crazy," she said firmly, "and I'm not leaving until someone with medical training examines Mr. Hall's body." Ryan turned to the lead security guard, a mountain of a man named Briggs. "Escort her off the property. Immediately. If she resists, call the police and have her arrested for trespassing and disturbing the peace." Briggs moved toward Felicia, his face impassive. But before Briggs could reach her, Felicia raised the vial high above her head. "I know about the tetrodotoxin," she shouted. "I know that's what you used, Ryan. It's a paralytic that mimics death, slows the heart to 1 or 2 beats per minute, drops body temperature, suppresses all reflexes. It's been used in Haiti for decades to create zombies, people who appear dead but aren't." Dr. Webb's face drained of all color. He swayed slightly, gripping his medical bag like a lifeline. Ryan's eyes locked on the vial, and for just a moment, pure panic flashed across his features before he could suppress it. "She's insane," he said, but his voice wavered. "She's clearly read some thriller novel and—" "I heard you," Felicia interrupted, her voice cutting through his excuses like a blade. "Last Thursday night, you and Dr. Webb, in your office, you said once he's buried, there's no evidence. You talked about the inheritance, about how the chemical would degrade, about how Ferguson would be aware but paralyzed." She turned to face the crowd. "He planned to bury his brother alive." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. From the third row, a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit stepped forward. Jonathan Price, CEO of Price Development, Ferguson Hall's biggest business rival and, ironically, one of his closest friends. "Ryan," Price said slowly, his eyes narrowed, "if you have nothing to hide, why not let them check? Ferguson always said you were paranoid about the company, said you felt entitled to what he'd built. I dismissed it as sibling rivalry. But now—" "This is ridiculous," Ryan protested. "Jonathan, you can't possibly—" "I can," Price interrupted, "and I am." He turned to Dr. Webb. "Marcus, you're a physician. Check the body. Check for the signs she mentioned. Pulse, warmth, anything." Dr. Webb stood frozen, trapped between his co-conspirator and the weight of dozens of watching eyes, dozens of recording phones. I've already examined him," Webb stammered. "He's been dead for—" "Then examining him again won't hurt anything, will it?" Price's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Unless there's something you don't want us to find." The crowd was fully engaged now, the collective curiosity overwhelming the social barrier that had initially protected Ryan. Several people moved closer to the casket. A woman in a purple hat called out, "Just open it, we all want to know." "This is a circus," Ryan hissed, but he was losing control of the narrative and everyone could see it. Felicia seized the moment. She held up the vial again, letting the gray morning light illuminate the clear liquid inside. "This is the antidote," she said, her voice steady now, strengthened by the shifting tide. "I found it in Dr. Webb's office. It's labeled counteragent tetrodotoxin derivative. If I'm wrong, if Mr. Hall is truly dead, then this is just saline or water and nothing will happen. But if I'm right—" she locked eyes with Ryan. "If I'm right, then your brother will wake up, and he'll tell everyone here exactly what you did to him." Dr. Webb made a strangled sound and stumbled backward. Ryan's jaw clenched. "You stole from a doctor's office. That's theft, That's evidence," Jonathan Price interrupted, "and I'm very interested in what happens when she administers it." Felicia's hands trembled slightly as she looked at the vial. Ferguson Hall had been the only executive who'd ever treated her like a human being. He'd learned her name, asked about her daughter, given her a Christmas bonus when her car broke down. Small kindnesses that had meant everything to someone used to being invisible. She wasn't doing this for glory or recognition. She was doing it because it was right, because he'd seen her when no one else did. "Open the casket," Price commanded, his voice brooking no argument. Ryan finally snapped. "No, I won't allow this desecration." Ferguson wanted privacy, dignity, and... "Open it," Price repeated, stepping toward the casket himself. Ryan moved to block him. And suddenly, Briggs and another security guard were caught between conflicting orders. Ryan's command to remove Felicia and Price's demand to open the casket. The crowd pressed closer, a mix of morbid curiosity and genuine concern driving them forward. Ryan grabbed Price's arm. "You have no authority here. I'm his brother, his next of kin, and I say we open it," Price shot back, shaking off Ryan's grip. "Because if that woman is telling the truth, you're a murderer, and if she's wrong, we bury Ferguson with our consciences clear." Two of Ferguson's business associates moved to help Price. Ryan's personal security guard, a man named Tors, stepped between them and his employer. "Mr. Hall," Tors said to Ryan, his voice quiet but firm. "Step aside, sir." "Tors, you work for me," Ryan sputtered. "I work for Hall Industries," Tors corrected. "And if there's any chance Mr. Ferguson Hall is alive, I'm obligated to check. Step aside." The betrayal on Ryan's face was visceral. He stood frozen as Tors and two other men lifted the casket lid, breaking the ceremonial seal. The crowd gasped collectively, pressing forward to see. Inside the white satin lining, Ferguson Hall lay perfectly still. His skin was pale, waxy. His chest showed no visible rise and fall. To all appearances, he was exactly what the death certificate claimed: deceased. "He's dead," someone whispered. She was wrong. But Felicia pushed through the crowd, holding the vial. She leaned over the casket, her hand hovering over Ferguson's chest. "Feel right here," she instructed Tors, pointing to a spot just below Ferguson's collarbone. "Press firmly. There should be warmth, very faint, but there." Tors placed his hand on Ferguson's chest, his expression skeptical. Then his eyes widened. There's something, it's faint, but there's warmth." "Check his carotid pulse," Felicia urged. "You'll need to press hard and wait. It might only beat once every 30 seconds. Dr. Webb made a move toward his medical bag, but Jonathan Price intercepted him, gripping his arm firmly. "You stay right where you are, Marcus." Tors pressed his fingers to Ferguson's neck, his face intense with concentration. The seconds ticked by, 10 seconds, 20, 30. "Nothing," he said, and Felicia's heart sank. But then Tors' eyes flew wide. Wait, there was something like a flutter. Jesus Christ, there was a pulse." The crowd erupted in shocked exclamations. Phones pressed closer, recording every moment. "Give him the antidote," someone shouted. "Do it now." Felicia's hands shook as she uncapped the vial. She'd never administered medication in her life. She had no medical training, but she'd read everything she could find about tetrodotoxin poisoning over the past 3 days, and she knew the antidote had to be injected directly into the bloodstream or administered sublingually for rapid absorption. "Under his tongue," she said, mostly to herself. "It has to go under his tongue." She gently pried open Ferguson's jaw. His muscles were rigid, locked by the paralytic, and carefully tilted the vial, letting the clear liquid pool under his tongue. Then she waited. The entire cemetery seemed to hold its breath. Rain pattered softly on the tent. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Ryan Hall stood at the edge of the gathering, his face ashen, watching his entire plan unravel before his eyes. 5 seconds passed, 10, 20. "Nothing's happening," someone murmured. 30 seconds, 45. Felicia's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. What if she was wrong? What if she'd misheard? What if? Ferguson Hall's right hand twitched. The movement was small, barely perceptible, but Felicia saw it. So did Tor's. His hand moved, Tor's shouted. His hand just moved. The crowd surged forward, everyone trying to see. Ferguson's fingers curled slowly, like a flower opening in reverse. His chest suddenly expanded with a deep, ragged inhale, the first real breath he'd taken in hours. His eyes flew open. The crowd screamed, some in terror, some in amazement, some in joy. Ferguson gasped again, his lungs working desperately to pull in oxygen. His eyes darted wildly, unfocused, panicked. His mouth opened and closed, trying to form words, but only gasping sounds emerged. "Get him oxygen," Price shouted. "Someone call an ambulance." Dr. Webb turned to run, but two men from the crowd grabbed him, holding him firmly in place. Ferguson's eyes finally focused, settling on the face hovering above him. Felicia Keys, the woman who cleaned his office every night, tears streaming down her face, smiling down at him like an angel. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're going to be okay, Mr. Hall." Ferguson's gaze shifted, scanning the faces around him until he found what he was looking for. His brother Ryan, standing at the edge of the crowd, frozen in horror. With tremendous effort, Ferguson raised his trembling arm and pointed directly at Ryan. His mouth formed words, though his voice was barely a whisper, ravaged by hours of paralysis. "He tried to kill me." The crowd erupted in chaos. People shouted, phones captured everything, and Ryan Hall began backing away, shaking his head in denial. No, this is insane. Ferguson, you're confused, you've been ill, you don't know what you're saying." "You and Webb," Ferguson rasped, his voice growing slightly stronger as the antidote continued its work. "Tetrodotoxin, I heard you, planning it, I was, paralyzed but I could, hear everything." Tor's and Jonathan Price moved simultaneously, blocking Ryan's retreat. "Someone call the police," Price said coldly. "We have an attempted murder to report." Ryan's face twisted with rage and desperation. He lunged toward the casket toward Ferguson, but Tor's caught him, wrestling him to the ground. "You ruined everything," Ryan screamed, thrashing against Tor's grip. "Everything I deserved, everything that should have been mine. You always had it all, the company, the respect, father's love, and you never even appreciated it. It should have been mine." The confession poured out of him like poison from a wound, witnessed and recorded by everyone present. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. 2 police cars and an ambulance pulled through the cemetery gates, cutting across the manicured lawn. Paramedics rushed to the casket, transferring Ferguson to a gurney, checking his vitals, administering oxygen. His color was already improving, his breathing becoming more regular. As they wheeled him toward the ambulance, Ferguson's hand shot out, grabbing Felicia's wrist with surprising strength. "You saved me," he said, his voice clearer now though still hoarse. "Why?" Felicia smiled through her tears. "Because you saw me, Mr. Hall. When I was invisible to everyone else, you saw me." Ferguson's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing me too, for seeing past all of this." He gestured weakly at the crowd, the cameras, the spectacle, for seeing that I was still in there. "Always," Felicia promised. As the paramedics loaded Ferguson into the ambulance, police officers handcuffed both Ryan Hall and Dr. Marcus Webb, reading them their rights. Ryan had gone silent, his face blank with shock. Webb was sobbing, already trying to negotiate, claiming he'd been coerced. Jonathan Price approached Felicia as the crowd slowly began to disperse, everyone talking at once, already forming the narrative they'd share about this incredible day. "Ms. Keys," Price said, extending his hand, "what you did took extraordinary courage." Felicia shook his hand, still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. "I just did what was right." "Most people wouldn't have," Price said. "Most people would have convinced themselves they'd misheard, or that it wasn't their place, or that no one would believe them." He studied her thoughtfully. "Ferguson is going to need people he can trust around him when he recovers, people with integrity, people who see what others miss." 2 weeks later, Felicia Keys sat in a conference room on the top floor of Hall Industries Tower. Not in the hallway with her cleaning cart, but at the polished mahogany table, surrounded by the company's board of directors. Ferguson Hall, still recovering but growing stronger each day, sat at the head of the table. He'd lost weight, and his voice still carried a slight rasp, but his eyes were alert and fierce. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began, "I'd like to introduce our newest board member and vice president of operations oversight, Felicia Keys." The announcement was met with stunned silence, then polite applause, some genuine, some clearly forced. Felicia felt every eye in the room on her, assessing, judging, wondering if the janitor could possibly belong in their world. Ferguson continued, "Ms. Keys has demonstrated something this company desperately needs, the ability to see what others overlook, the courage to speak uncomfortable truths, and the integrity to act even when it costs her everything." He looked directly at Felicia, his expression warm. "She saved my life, and she's going to help me save this company from the rot that almost destroyed it." As the meeting progressed, Felicia contributed insights about operational inefficiencies she'd observed during her years cleaning every corner of the building, insights that made the executives sit up and take notice. She'd spent years invisible, watching, learning, seeing everything. Now finally she was seen. That evening, as Felicia packed up her belongings from the janitor's closet for the last time, she found a handwritten note from Ferguson tucked into her locker. "Felicia, you gave me back my life. I intend to spend the rest of it making sure your gifts are never overlooked again. Thank you for your courage, your compassion, and your refusal to be invisible when it mattered most. You didn't just save me. You reminded me what this company was supposed to be about, seeing value where others see nothing. Welcome to the table. You've earned your seat. Ferguson." Felicia folded the note carefully, tucked it into her pocket, and walked out of the basement for the last time. As she stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the executive floor, her floor now, she smiled. She'd spent years being invisible, but she'd never been powerless. She'd just been waiting for the moment when her voice would matter most. And when that moment came, she'd been ready. Ryan Hall and Dr. Marcus Webb were convicted of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit fraud. Ryan received a 25-year sentence. Webb, who cooperated with prosecutors, received 15 years. Ferguson Hall restructured Hall Industries, implementing oversight protocols and promoting several employees from non-traditional backgrounds to executive positions. Felicia Keys became one of the most effective board members the company had ever seen, using her unique perspective to identify inefficiencies and ethical lapses that others had missed. Her daughter graduated from college with a business degree, funded by a scholarship Ferguson established in Felicia's name. And every year, on the anniversary of that rain-soaked morning in the cemetery, Ferguson and Felicia shared a quiet lunch together. A reminder that the greatest power often lies not in wealth or position, but in the courage to speak truth when silence would be easier.